Hi, my name is Janynee Hodgkins. I'm a registered nurse. My background is on oncology and hospice, and the reason I was attracted to that was because it was looking at people from a holistic approach. It led me into brain integration therapy, partly because I was interested in the whole person, and partly because I had a set of twins who had been prematurely born, and it had some effects from that. And brain integration therapy helped them tremendously in school and in life. And I then myself went through brain integration and found that it helped me a great deal. Brain integration started about 50 years ago by a couple doctors who were medical doctors, Dr. Doman and an educator, Dr. Delicato. They determined that people that had had head injuries, whether it was via stroke or accidents, they wanted to find out how they could relearn activities they had lost. What they determined to do was to find out how infants had learned these activities, and they found out that they learned them through physical movement, that children weren't actually born wired for these activities, but they became plugged in through physical movement. And what we find out is that movement has a lot to do with the precursor for learning. These doctors went across all the continents and looked at infants crawling, and they mapped out their brain, and they found out that when they did the movement of crawling and looking up, that they were stimulating the brain centers that had to do with vision, and that when they would turn to the side to listen to their parents, that they were actually stimulating the brain centers for auditory processing. And that, as kids will do, creeping and crawling and picking things up and putting them in their mouth, that they were actually stimulating those centers that had to do with hand-eye coordination. So by reinventing that activity in an adult, they were able to get the adult to relearn some of these activities of reading, writing, and arithmetic. As a result of that research that was done by those physicians, then Dr. Dennison, who was an educator, took that information and then translated that more into the educational world. He then became the creator of Brain Gym, which a lot of you have heard of in the school systems. And that information and research was then taken by a lady named Diane Kraft. And she did a lot of seminars for educators in terms of bringing that into getting the child to learn and be able to function better. The lady that did my training, Becky Kennard, worked with Diane Kraft. And Becky Kennard took that to another level by introducing something called an AccuSpark, which was a little tool implemented by a chiropractor named Dr. Chambers. It is a tool that works kind of on the same lines as acupressure, where points of pressure are applied to little nerve meridians on the body. It's not like acupuncture where the needles are put into those meridians, but it's just the acupressure point that is electrically stimulated with this sparker. It is a very benign and safe kind of an electricity that comes out of the AccuSpark. And Becky found that by implementing that with repatterning and with the Brain Gym, that we could actually get these exercises to work longer and stick better, as it were. So what is brain integration therapy, and what does it look like? It's comprised of a treatment regimen that starts out with a thorough evaluation. I meet with clients and talk with them about what their background is like, what kind of things that they've had in terms of learning disabilities, or are there things in their family, such as are they left-handed or is their family left-handed? Have they had more right brain learners? Are they more of a kinesthetic or moving kind of a learner? And then we also do a lot of education, like I'm doing now with you, to bring them into what the brain looks like and how we can best get that to work more efficiently, and really get them to celebrate how they are wired for their brain type and how they learn. And then we meet for 10 to 11 sessions with a certain category of activity in mind. Perhaps we're working on eyes or ears or hand-eye coordination. And then we do an actual repatterning session, and then they go home and they do the exercises that will then keep what we've done and getting those dendrites in the brain to form and to wire together. Those exercises they do at home will then keep them concrete and gelled in. What do I mean by getting something plugged in or wired? Well, we're made up essentially of water and electricity. And our brain has all of these neuron cells that you're going to be looking at pictures of in a moment. And those neuron cells have dendrites that look like little spiders or little fingers, and they connect. And you literally have trillions and trillions of those in your brain that connect and can make tens of thousands of connections. And when that happens, signals can then efficiently go through the brain electrically in order to talk. It's kind of like if you were playing telephone in school and whispering along the line and seeing if you could get the right information out at the end. If there's something that comes in between, if maybe someone doesn't spread the information correctly, then you have a problem. And that's what happens when we're unplugged or not wired correctly for physical movement or for activities such as reading, writing, and arithmetic. Let me give you an example. If I had you turn on this little light, you would expect the light to come on. If for some reason when you turned it on nothing happened, then you might wonder, well, is it the light bulb burned out? Is there a problem with our source of electricity? But you wouldn't look at the light and say, you're a stupid light. It has nothing to do with the light's intelligence. And that's the same thing with brain integration therapy. This has nothing to do with someone's intelligence. In fact, most of the clients I see are highly intelligent, highly bright people. And there's actually a lot of research that shows that people like Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci suffered from things like ADD and dyslexia and were very, very smart individuals. But there were some things that made them unique to who they were, and they actually embraced that and used that to come up with some wonderful inventions and things and ideas. Another idea and concept that's really helpful in understanding brain integration is the idea that the brain will take efficient routes if possible, but when it's not, it will sometimes take a route that's much harder to form, which means we'll be able to do an activity, but it may be harder. For example, I live in the Colorado area. If I were going to ask someone how they would drive from Denver to Colorado Springs, they would say they would take the one main freeway in our state. However, if I said, oh no, let's go through the mountains, it would take 4 to 5+ hours longer to do that. And they would wonder why I would take such an inefficient route. Well, our brain does the same thing sometimes. It has to be able to function to read, but it may take a longer route, thereby making someone tired or sick or irritable because they're having to work so much harder to do that. And so what brain integration therapy does is help the brain act and work in a more efficient manner.